Hi guys, welcome to Learning Electronics Repair. This is the box full of scrap that we had a look at a week or so ago. I was looking at the motherboards and graphics cards. We were doing some surface mount salvage. So I thought this time we'll do some through hole salvage. So there's some old ATX power supplies in here. There's some old disco lighting thing. I have some PCBs from TVs, old scrap power bricks and such like. Let's have a look to see what we can find in here, what's useful and what we can salvage from it. Okay, let's begin. We'll start with a few old ATX power supplies. Of course, this will again depend on what you have in your stock, what you want to salvage, what's useful to you. I have quite a lot of this sort of stuff, so personally with these I would be interested in the MOSFETs and diodes. They've been removed off this one already, or maybe those heat sinks are somewhere in that box. Other things I'd very much find myself interested in are fuses, especially these type that are soldered on the ends, because they're a little bit fiddly to do, unless of course they're completely blown, which this one looks like it might be actually. Yeah, it looks like that one's actually gone, so probably not, but any of that type of fuse I tend to go for. I find it quite troublesome to solder wires on the end if I need to replace this type. What normally happens is the solder melts inside and the actual fuse filament comes away from the end cap. I've never tried welding them. I've actually got a little spot welder here. Maybe I can play around with that actually. The large capacitors, depending on what you've got, these can be quite useful, especially the higher value ones. These are 470s. These are like the bigger ones, so I'd probably go for some of those, keep them in stock. In actual fact, I'm looking, they're all the same value. Opto couplers, the IC, control ICs. These capacitors, well, that looks like it's gone. And these look okay, but personally, if I see that one's gone, I won't bother with these other ones. These inductors, they don't tend to fail, and I don't find any much of a use for them. I have a number already, but higher powered resistors I always grab, useful. The opto coupler, definitely. Okay, and these capacitors, these sometimes fail. I have a few, but maybe I'll just grab that as well. And I usually go for the transistors and larger diodes, not the small ones. So let's have a look to see what we can get from these. We'll start with this one. This, by the way, these are handy things to have, useful for projects and things. This actually just fell off the board. These are normally something like this, so 2.2 farad, K is the tolerance voltage. These are quite handy components to have, unless you've got dozens of them, but if you haven't, now's a good time to start. Okay, I mentioned high powered resistors, so let's grab that one from here. A bit of leaded solder is going to help with this, no doubt. Okay, just move myself a little bit in the inset there, you see. Came out very easily. At least we have one long lead on these, that's useful. These big capacitors, we can take these from here. So just melt one end, lean it away from me, melt the other end, lean it towards me, away from me, so very simple. Okay. And these components are basically easy to test. That's a good reason to salvage them, because if you're going to use salvage parts, you should always check they're good before you use them. I don't test them before, I test them at the point when I want to use them. I think that's the best use of my time, really, rather than testing them all, but you know, whatever method you think works well for you. Again, a higher value resistor, higher wattage, so if it comes off easily, it's ours. That just fell out of the board as well. So normally for this sort of salvage, I either just use my fingers, unless the thing gets too hot, or long nose pliers. I don't need much else in the way of actual tools to do this sort of salvage, unless I'm coming to the transistors. The problem I normally find with small through-hole transistors is one leg will come off during the process. The best way I find is to take something like a pair of tweezers like this and get it in between the legs. The other option is to try and grab the legs all together with a pair of long nose pliers, depending if there's space. Here we don't have much space, so that's wedged in there, okay, under the actual transistor. Okay, I can rest it on its back there, and if I just get a nice big blob of solder across all three legs together here and try to heat them all up at once, okay, and it just falls out of the board normally. In fact, that came loose, that's why the thing fell over. So again, between the legs, warm all the pins up together again. It should just fall out of the board without any amount of pressure on it, to be quite honest. You can see, look, you see what's happening? It's kind of like almost out now. I can just grab hold of the leg which is still soldered. Again, just get through the gap. Okay, in one piece. So that's a good way to do those. It takes a little bit of practice, and even with practice you might find occasionally you still lose one of the legs, but it went quite well. Are there any more on here? Yeah, there's another one there. So we'll try the same technique. So again, try to get under the transistor, okay? I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on that now. Nice blob of solder. I think this one is here. I just had a look to see where that was from the other side of the board, and then I know I'm sort of near here, so somewhere in this area I think. Nothing's happening, so maybe not there. Let's go again. We can see it. I think it's actually this one. I can see the resistors behind it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's these three. Then there's a diode or something in front of it. Those are quite long legs on it on this side. That makes it maybe a little bit more difficult to get out, but let's have a go. So first of all, we had some solder. Okay. We're not worried about bridges because this is scrap. Now let's get the tweezers under it again. Okay, does it come out? Well, nothing's happening, so I'm thinking maybe I'm actually in the wrong place here. Sometimes this can be the problem, is trying to determine where things actually are. But it turns out I was right. Because with a little bit more heat, it just came out. It came out nicely, okay, nice and clean. And with all the legs still attached. These ICs can be a little bit tricky and probably not that useful in a way, but you know, we'll try. And this will be a good demonstration of how to do this anyway. So what I normally try to do is get one of these type of tools under the edge here, and I'll warm all the pins down one side if I can. Let's see how well this actually works. You could, of course, do it the proper way and try to desolder all the pins individually, but I find this way generally works well and it's much faster. So let's see. So we'll get a good amount of solder. This may be quite tricky on this one because it has a lot of pins, but we'll see. We will see. So I'll wedge that under the edge, act like a lever, and I'll just try to do one side and see if we can get it to go. Yeah. Look what happened. Okay, you see that? Yeah, I told you that wasn't so difficult. Now I can just get hold of that. Okay. And we do the same on the other side. And out it comes. And there it is. Pins are slightly bent, but not very bent. They're all intact. You can straighten these up easily enough with the long nose pliers. I tend not to bother too much. I'll put it into my storage of components, and then if I want to use it, that's when I'll just finally straighten those up. Okay. There's a couple more resistors on this, just the larger ones. You can unsolder those. This is the TL431. I have a lot of them, so I'm not going to take it off there, but it's just as easy as unsoldering the transistor. Exactly the same method we use on the other ones. There's one more transistor, so we can unsolder that. And then I think we've finished with this one. Let's try desoldering this transistor the other method. So rather than using the tweezers between the legs, I'll actually grab this with a pair of long nose pliers. But notice I'm grabbing the component by the legs, not by the body, the package, okay? Let's see. Add a bit of fresh solder. This can make it more difficult because you can actually be soaking up a lot of heat into the pliers. But also you're less likely to lose one of the legs of the components as well, so we can try that. Okay, there it is. This isn't actually a TL431, so let's get this one as well. I can get in quite well under there. Okay, bit of fresh solder. And there we go. So you can see that didn't take very long, wasn't too difficult, but bear in mind this one had the two large heat sinks already removed, which in itself makes it quite easy. So let's try again on a complete PCB. Okay, here's another scrap power supply. Now, the problem with salvaging this is actually getting at everything. You can see we have these devices here bolted on, a couple of transistors. Another one behind there is held on with a nut, which I think I can see, yeah, kind of like right down there. That bolts a device from the other side as well. Okay. And we have another device on here. So you basically can't get in it that easily. Yeah. And then we have this other heat sink, and that has devices down there bolted on as well, at least one. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you could go at this. One's a really messy way, but you want to do this outdoors. I'm not going to do it here in the workshop, but you can literally cut somewhere down here with a Dremel and just literally cut the board in half, and then you can get in at each side. It doesn't take much to do it, it's just very, very messy and dusty. Yeah. As I say, if you're going to do that, you want to do it outdoors. But I'm not going to do it that way. I'm actually going to go a bit brutal at it, but this board here has an IC on, a couple of other things on there, some transistors. We probably want those. I can literally break this off, so we just put pressure on the thing, yeah, snap it off because this thing is scrap, and we can now get a lot more easily into here. Okay, so we have a little board there. There's some nice parts on this by the looks of it. Okay, that we can salvage. I can now see down here more easily. to get these wires out of the way. You can see this was faulty capacitor there. That might have been the only fault on this one actually. Okay, but it's certainly faulty now. Right, so these two I think we can unbolt. No, this is behind here. So to do that, you're going to have to get this inductor off. If you want it, unsolder it. If you don't, get some big wire cutters and just cut the legs off it. Okay, I don't have any particularly big wire cutters here, so I'm just going to unsolder that. Hopefully this will come off quite easily. Okay. Yeah, it just came out the board. Get the other end. It fell out. Yeah, you hear it fall out the board. So that was off easily. That means we can now get to these. So the other one is this one. Now this will have quite a lot of legs on it. Okay. It's all wired down here. I would probably try to break this off the board because I don't actually want it. Sometimes you can actually just go along and cut all the wires near where it goes to the PCB. This has quite a bit of stuff in the way again. More bad capacitors. This won't be easy to unsolder. Let's see if we maybe don't need to, okay? You could use the method to actually desolder all the legs from these components and then desolder the two big mounts that are holding the heatsink on and then take it off in one go. That's another possible. But I think it's best to try and unbolt these from the heatsink, or as many of them as you can at least. Okay, this one has a nut on the end. I might be able to get a small spanner on that. It might just spin. We can try. Yeah, I can't easily get a spanner onto that. I don't think the pliers will do it. Actually, they are doing. But I can see the whole thing is spinning, so that's not going to help. Okay, just looking at this again, I think there's only one transistor on here. So if I get these large capacitors off, I might be able to take the heatsink and that off altogether. And that gives me a good chance to get to this side, okay? We have a bit of space. I'm not sure what these actually are. I think they're capacitors actually under those, okay? Little ceramic ones or something like that. These I think are resistors. Yeah, they're marked as being resistors, okay. Let's see, so we have two brackets holding this on either end. So one is here, one is there, okay, and the one transistor. So let's see if we can actually unsolder the transistor. Okay. I think that's clean. Yeah. I mean, this is a great way to practice your soldering skills, guys, as well, you know. This is a great way to practice your skills at soldering, using different methods to desolder, figuring out how your soldering iron reacts, how good it is, what it can cope with, what it can't, okay? So not only do you get some useful components, you also get a lot of practice. And that in itself is worth your time. Okay, so that looks like it's probably free. If we can move the pins, it is. Yeah, we can move that one. That one I can't. That one I can. No, that one I can as well, so that's 3, right. We should be able to heat up one end of the heatsink and kind of like bend this thing a little bit. Maybe the other end will just give it up, which is here. Okay, alright, let's see, so heat up this end and put some pressure on it. Didn't feel like it wanted to move. Let's go with the other end. Actually, I think it might be there. No. Okay, we'll try to get something under this edge and try to lever this off. Big screwdriver, okay. Let's try again. So I can see where it is. It's here. Yeah, that came easily. Other end. Yeah, it's off. Well, pretty much so. I think it's actually glued by this thing here. Yeah. So they didn't want you to get this off easily, that's for sure. Be a bit careful with this, guys. There's a lot of sharp things here to, yeah, don't injure yourself. Okay. Well, apart from one bent leg on the transistor, it came off. Pretty much. These heat sinks are very useful things. Heat sinks are expensive to buy, so I suggest you do keep them. Just keep a nice tub full of old heat sinks. If you're building your own projects, you'll find these things very useful, okay? So we're getting there. I've taken the bridge rectifier off. Some of these things that were held under the heat shrink, we can look at those. So I still need to get to this one bolt down there before I can actually take the heatsink off. There's 2 there. So only way to do that really is to get rid of the transformer. Not very easy to unsolder these, but if you don't want it, there's an easier way. Yeah, if you don't want it. I'd take this resistor off, but it's all under the glue both sides, so I won't bother with that. I just want to cut the other leg off the transformer. Okay. One more. Okay, so I've cut all the pins on the one side. I can probably kind of just like waggle this backwards and forwards. It'll give it up, I think. We'll get a screwdriver under here and just try to unsolder the other side. In fact, it looks like it's going to break off anyway with a bit of luck. Although the transformer is scrap, they're quite useful if you want some of that enamelled wire. Sometimes they're fairly easy to dismantle and the wire can be kind of useful, okay. I'm just getting some pressure on this with this screwdriver. Get it under there. Hopefully I can get it to lever away from the board. Try a bit of brute force. Okay. And it's coming off. Okay. A lot of brute force there, guys. I cut some of the pins, but it's off, yeah. Sometimes, as I say, you can get the enamel wire out of this. It can be handy. Okay, you're not going to use this as a transformer again, but you might do. Normally to do that, if this is like a ferrite type stuff, I usually hit it with a hammer to crack this. Maybe like chisel or a big screwdriver and a hammer. Get the coil out, and then you can, if you want to, salvage some wire from that, some enamelled wire. But the main thing now is we can get to what we wanted to get to. I have a really old ATX power supply here for salvage. Things like this, always useful. Yeah, I make up leads to fit onto things like this when I want to extend some wires to something I'm trying to repair and I can't get it into a position I want to. Yeah, because the existing cables are too short. This power supply is old. It's over 20 years old, probably 25 years old. So I'm going to take the power devices off this. You may well find that these sort of transistors are hard to get these days, or certainly hard to get original ones. So those I'll certainly take from here, and I'll probably take some of these larger capacitors. This chip, well, if you wanted to have it, but that's such a common chip, I really don't need it. And this one here, LM494 or an equivalent, to have those anyway. I might take that one off though. So that's basically what I want from this, nothing else really. Let me get these parts off and we'll see what we have. Well, we have some high voltage, fairly high value capacitors. So this would be 1 microfarad. K is not like a kilo. This is the tolerance, okay, 250 volt. And a 0.22 microfarad. Again, that's the tolerance, 630 volt. These are very useful capacitors to have. They're expensive to buy sometimes. Another one, 0.1 microfarad, 250 volt with nice long leads on. I have a few electrolytics now. I'm only taking these larger ones. Generally, you might think that capacitors of this age are not worth having. That can be the case, but generally speaking, they work just fine. It's capacitor of a certain era, around about the year 2000, which was all the problem, yeah, due to faulty manufacturing basically. So these larger ones worth having. Okay, I've got those 3. Interesting looking inductor. Inductors always worth having. These are expensive things to buy if you can even find them. Looks like a capacitor, yeah, but 8D13. This is an NTC thermistor. These things fail a lot, so always have them. Yeah, always have those. A few useful heat sinks. Again, I have a box which I put these in. Couple of transistors. You might find again that these more vintage ones are types that you can't get anymore, that are not readily available. I mean, these may be readily available, but often they are not. So one small long lead, so having them. Double Schottky diode, okay. Another one, and the 2 bipolar NPN transistors. These will be okay. Often again you'll find you can't get these. I mentioned them before, so a few connectors, useful things. A few micro washers, yeah, these things get broken, so keep them. And a fuse with wires or leads attached, yeah. Although these look like they're soldered on, they may well be. The fuse looks okay. Yeah, the fuse is okay, I think. So, again, very useful components. Right, what else have we got in this box of stuff? We have some boards from TVs, yeah, old TV boards. These will be from TVs with broken panels, screens, okay. So they're scrap. They probably actually work. They may have some value in their own right, but this is not a kind of thing I'm into at all. So to me, they're worth things like these connectors. I mean, I would suggest if you're interested in the value of these things, you can look up these model numbers on eBay, see if anybody's selling them, how much they're asking, and then go to the completed listings and see if anybody's buying them for what price, and then decide. But these I don't need, so these are scrap for me. You can comment down below if this one was worth $500,000. It won't be in the moment. So what do I see? Well, I see quite a lot of inductors, and I think I'm going to take them from here because they're all marked with the values, so that's nice. I'm not too interested in most of these ICs. I don't think they're probably a bit too dedicated, but the ones next to the coils could well be buck controllers, so maybe have those. I will certainly try to take off these HDMI connectors. You can always guarantee you've got a broken one. You can never find the right one that you want to replace it with, so they're going to come off. Probably desolder these from the reverse side. It's the easiest way to do it without actually melting the thing. And I noticed these have like a standoff underneath, so these are very much a non-standard size, you could say. So I'm definitely going to take those off there. Quite possible to get these USBs as well. Okay. Any big chunky SMD things like this are probably diodes. Again, that's probably the butt controller. So I can sort of see what I want here. Let's get the hot air out and let's see if we can get any of these off. If you repair a lot of these, you might want these type of connectors as well. You can get them off, but I probably don't have a need for them, so I probably won't bother in that case. Well, you can see that one didn't come off very well, yeah. The connector might be okay. So the other two, I'm just going to add a bit of leaded solder. Just get this thing out of our way for now. Okay. The whole everywhere's a bit hot. Alright, let's just add some leaded solder to the pins themselves. This should make it much easier to actually unsolder. It was obvious I was getting a lot of heat into the metalwork of this, but not into the actual PCB, which is why that one just ripped all those tracks off. Okay, yeah, but that's another good thing with this sort of salvage, because not only do you get useful components, you also learn about how your desoldering equipment behaves, what happens in certain circumstances. So if you're going to do what I just did, it's much better to do that with a scrap board than something you actually want, yeah. That is for sure, okay. You see that one came off straight away, no problem. And same with that one. Okay, so you can see what happened to the board there. All these traces, yeah. That was the first one I tried to unsolder, yeah. This was the second and the third one. So this is where we added some leaded solder. You can see they came off much better. Again, with the USB ones, it just took the pads off the board. So I saved the component, we'll have a look at them in a moment, but obviously the board was trashed. So that's not the way to do it on something where you actually want to repair something, yeah? And what do we have? Well, we have a nice selection of inductors, all marked, so they're useful. We have a couple of large SMD devices. I'm not sure if these actually are marked or not. Yeah, that one is. Probably diode, that one, or some sort of avalanche device or protection device. This one, quite possibly the same. But again, they're marked, so could be useful. Have a smaller one, similar sort of thing, looks like some sort of diode. Nice chunky SMD resistor, these are worth having. And then a few ICs that I think were probably buck controllers, just because where they were on the PCB. Maybe not, maybe are. Nice little selection of them. We have a, what is this, a regulator or MOSFET? Okay, we'd have to look that one up to see what it is. This could be a 1.5 or 15 volt regulator, maybe. And this, well, it just came off, but it was right next to where some of the buck coils were, so I would say this is another VRM or buck controller. So we have those. These are some of these connectors, so you can see where it's actually ripped the trace off the board. You see that? That's effectively the pad. This was part of the trace, but the connector itself isn't melted. It's nice. It won't be a problem just to get these off here, I don't think. Just to clean these off. Yeah. Another one. Same. Again, they just come off. So these are quite unusual USB connectors. This is the last one. So exactly the same thing happened. Yeah. Connector is fine. Bit dusty, but fine. And then we have the HDMI. So there was some where I actually added some fresh solder. This one you can see has some of these traces attached to it. Once again, a bit of flux will probably just get those off. And I think the connector itself will be fine. Okay, it's looking good. Yeah, that's usable. I have a solder bridge on there, but soon clean it off. So yeah, that came out fine. We could easily clean that up a little bit more with a bit of flux and just solder like I'm doing. Okay, you can see that these bits are just coming off. Okay, the bench didn't like that quite so much, but it's a workbench. Yeah. So HDMI, and we have a couple more. So these are the ones where I actually added the leaded solder first. You can see it's melted across all the pins, but pretty much has totally stopped this from happening with these bits of traces attached. Once again, they wouldn't be too much of a problem just to clean up, but we'd add some flux and just clean them off like so. Okay, so that's what we had from that board, and I have a few more old TV controller main boards as well. Once again, the most interesting thing to me on here is the sockets, inductors, yeah, and there's, again, some of these probably buck controller drivers, that sort of chip. Okay, large power devices. This one has some quite chunky polymer capacitors on. I think I'll take those off if I can get them without damaging them. I think they are worth having. Some 330 microfarad 25 volt, I think, and these are 470 16 volts, so we'll have a go at those. Unusual style HDMI again, so worth having. Yeah, and this last one is very similar devices on this. So this is basically a bit of SMD salvaging, but I'll get what I want from these, whatever I think is useful. So this one, the HDMI unusual style, so I'm definitely going to have that. There's a USB unusual style. Again, this may be held on by glue. It's fairly hard, that stuff, and I see that elsewhere on here as well, so that makes it maybe a bit more difficult. This, I'll add some leaded solder down here first. I'll probably end up melting these, to be honest. I don't really want them, so I'm not too bothered. Otherwise, I would suggest you trying to take these off first. Okay, here's some Max. This looks like some sort of serial type. In fact, that's a serial port, so I'll probably take that off. That could be a useful component. So let's see how easy or difficult this is. So first of all, I'm just going to add some leaded solder on this one. warms up a little bit first, it makes it easy to get the solder to stick. Bit of flux, bit of solder. Yeah, I think I've got some on there at least. Okay. I'm not too fussed about this. I've got a lot of these sort of connectors. Okay. This will probably require the long nose pliers to get good grip on it. Can I do this without melting it? We'll try not to get too much heat directly down into the connector. I think it's coming loose. Yep. Let's just try this USB as well. I want to see how more difficult that glue makes this. And the fact is it didn't really. Let's see if that survived. I like the look of these inductors, so let's have these as well. And this will be the chip, the controller, which is probably a more generic component, so we'll have it. It probably gets used in various sort of PCBs as a buck converter, or a dual one I would say. Okay, you see, these come off easy. Some sort of MOSFET probably, or a regulator. Probably a MOSFET. Okay. I generally keep my hot air at 450 on full airflow. That's what it's set to now. These capacitors can explode, to be honest. I'll just try to unsolder one, because I'm thinking of taking the big ones off that other board. Let's just see how easy they come off on this one. So that came off nicely. So did that one. The other MOSFET. So again with this, I'm trying not to put the air directly onto the capacitor, I'm just putting it either side, okay. I'll just take a few more parts off this one and let's see what we have. Well, we have a lot of HDMI in different types. These are always very handy. You never seem to have the one that you need, so the more you've got, well, maybe a bit less than never. Yeah, maybe on the other occasion you will have. So we have a whole variety of different types here. Some surface mounts, some through hole, you can see that. Another one there. These are all pretty much different. We might have a few pairs in here of the same type. I have one drawer that I keep all the HDMI connectors in. I do have some new ones as well, so I know exactly where they're going to go. They all look to be perfectly fine, but again, I don't really too much worry unless obviously they're visibly damaged. I'll just throw them away, but if they look pretty much okay, they go in their box, and then if I need a particular one, well, I check out to make sure it is okay. So there you go in the stash. I think I need to get a bigger drawer for HDMI soon. I seem to be rather successful and guarantee these will turn out useful at some point. Okay. I also have a few jack sockets. These again look like they came off okay. Bit of glue with that one. None of them melted, so you can unsolder these things. Yeah, you can unsolder them. This one is a very small one, like a little miniature one, I think. Yeah, 3.5 mil, 2.5 mil. They're handy. Again, I have a drawer for jack sockets, so you can go in there. Little triple phone. Now, I have quite a few of these, but it came off easy, so I have it. And USB, just a different design, came off nicely. And this one as well, so USB 3. These all have places to live in my collection, otherwise it would just be useless. Yeah, I need to know where stuff is. These will just have to go in with these somewhere. At least I know where to find them. A nice selection of inductors we have here. Okay, all different sizes, different values. Again, these have a place to live in my collection. I'm not quite so organized in the way I keep inductors, but I have this. So this is basically all inductors. These are inductor beads. There are some resistors in here as well, which need going to where they should be, but I have a lot of inductors basically in here. So even these ones are all inductors. This little stash are all pulls, so this is exactly where these are going to go. Maybe one day I will really sort all these out. But for now, at least I know where they are. Yeah, I know where they are. So if I want one, I can have a little look through there and it shouldn't be too difficult to find it if I've got it. Same applies with these. So these big ones did come off nicely. They didn't really melt either, yeah. They came off quite nicely. The plastic melted a little bit at the bottom, but these are not bad at all. Again, I'm not quite so organised with these. I have this little box, mostly bagged up. Some are all of one value, some are a little bit more mixed, okay. So these can all go together in here for now. At least again, I do know where they all are, and at some point if I need to get a bit more organised with them, I will. This all stacks up, by the way, just this thing. So I also have some SMD capacitors in here of all different sizes as well. Those are well organised. Okay, that's handy. Then I have some SMD, either MOSFETs or voltage regulators. We'd have to look these up to see what they are. Okay, those two are effectively a pair. Let me see if I recognise any. I can't say I see any at the moment that I particularly recognise. Oh, that one, 1733. That's a 3.3 volt voltage regulator. This one also 1117 is another voltage regulator. I think this one AL is the one which is adjustable. A bit like LM317, really. Yeah, 1718, that's a 1.8 volt positive fixed voltage regulator. This one I don't recognise, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a voltage regulator. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these are voltage regulators, but it could be MOSFETs or transistors, of course. That one is a 3.3 volt regulator for certain. Yeah, another one. And a small one that I don't recognise. Okay, so we have all those. These ones, I'll show you how I keep these. This is from a set of drawers. I have a whole set of these from IKEA. IKEA, however you want to say that. So this is all basically SMD ICs in a sort of alphabetical, numerical type order. Okay. So we have those, and then these here, this is all SMD MOSFETs and transistors. So that's where they would go. The voltage regulators end up in here normally with the ICs, because basically it is an IC, even though it looks more like a transistor. So you'll find in here, look, 117 adjustable, 117 3.3, and so on. Okay, 117 1.8. So a lot of those will end up in there. And I have some more of these. I can just start a new one, put some new part number on, insert it where it belongs. Yeah, so that's how they get kept. I also have some SMD diodes. I think actually that one might be a capacitor. I'll put these all together for now. So every now and then when I'm in the mood, I have a bit of a session where I kind of file these things where they belong, okay? I don't really have anywhere specific at the moment for SMD diodes. I'm going to have to make myself probably another little set of drawers or something, okay? But for now, they can just go into a bag. I think just about all of these are going to be buck converter type chips. That's actually so we will put that on one side. These ones, you can usually tell because they have like a big pad underneath. That one Yamaha may well not be. That could be something else, maybe even a sound chip. These get filed in that same drawer I just showed you. That's actually a MOSFET. That one, I'm pretty certain that is a MOSFET. Looks like a MOSFET. That'll be a buck converter or controller for, and so on. So these end up in that drawer I just showed you in the little anti-static bags, all in alphabetical order. Okay. And then I have these. So these are small outline ICs or SOIC. That's the name of the package. That one, oh, this is a MOSFET, look, 25L something or other. That's a MOSFET, another MOSFET here. Probably the same as that one. More MOSFETs. Can you see these 24C? These are very useful chips. So these will end up filed away in that drawer I was showing you. I think there's about 10 drawers in that cabinet. I'm still on the first one. I use the rest for keeping paper and stuff in right now, but I can always expand the collection. There'll be a number that I don't recognise here now. A lot of these are quite likely to be buck controllers because of where I took them off on the circuit, okay? I don't normally look them up, I just file them away under the part number and then I can always find it if I want it for something. Yeah, another RT something or other. Yeah, quite a few of those RT, Realtek I think. A little one. Again, that's probably a buck converter actually. Yeah. In fact, if they have these big pads underneath them, they're almost certainly buck controller type chips because that's why they have the pad underneath them. See, again like that one. This one I can't read, it's covered in gunk. I'll probably just throw that away. It's just too much hassle if I can't read it. Yeah, a few bigger ones. See, Max 232, that's a serial comms. That's useful. This is a LM324 quad op amp. These are all useful generic parts, yeah, for just about any project. There's another Max 232, well worth having. More of these RT whatevers. Another op amp, LM324 quad op amp, or comparator, one or the other. ATML something or other. Another one is ATML. Okay, so that's what we have there. So you can see we have a really nice selection of components there for a bit of salvage time. All these ICs are going to get put in a bag. The MOSFETs and regulators are going to a different bag, and then later I can sort them out quite easily. Okay, so some useful components there waiting to be filed away properly. And I think you guys have seen enough salvaging, but I do have a bit more stuff left. I'll just show you what's left. So this will effectively end up in my stock as well, but we won't do any more taking apart, I think, on this video. So in this box I have quite a few of these. Okay, these are all the same value, I think. 100 watt 1 ohm by the looks of it, 4, 8, 15 of them. So yeah, probably enough or almost enough to make a dummy load maybe. So they are useful. And then I have a few more things. So this was obviously off one of those power supplies earlier on. Take the transistors off that one. This is a little LED VU meter type thing, with a gap above and below on it. That's probably something you could quite easily work out how this actually works. So we have a lot of OLM339. So these are all comparators, and I'm guessing that each comparator, there's 4 of them, 4, 8, 12, 24. How many LEDs do we have? Well, we have 13 and 13, but maybe one is just like it lights up. So there's probably 12 and 12. So this probably forms some sort of like divider with all these resistors. So you feed an AC signal into it and some power, and these go up and down. That's how I think that works. Maybe just keep hold of that. Actually, it's a handy little module. This one's off a old satellite receiver. HDMI is worth having, if nothing else. Some sort of MOSFET, I would think, K something or other. A few more double diodes, so we'll have those off there. This is off an old amplifier or something, I guess. Mixer maybe. So these connectors are definitely worth taking off there. This one, I'm not really sure what that is, to be quite honest. These seem very specific chips I don't really see. Oh, effect DSP module. That's an EEPROM, I'm sure, so the EEPROM I think would be worth having. The rest of it, well, it's probably just too specific to be much of use to me. Oh, 4558s. These are dual op amps, very generic, useful. Although I think I have a lot of those anyway, new ones. Oh, 78L05, that's got to be worth having. The other stuff is probably not really worth me using, but yeah, that's going to be an EEPROM, I'm sure. Looks like one. This is probably all off the same old piece of equipment by the looks of it. So D482 sounds like a transistor actually. SDB, I'm not sure what that one is. Coils. A few more SMD devices can get filed away. This is like a buck converter probably. Controller, that might be just driving this lot actually by the looks of it. Yes, I'd probably take the coils off and these things at least off that one. This is off that old LED light thing. This blew up actually, so it probably isn't worth taking parts off this. I could have, I wanted to kind of reverse engineer that. I mean, you can see I've tried to repair this at some point. I think it just blew up again. So probably not totally worth the effort. As I remember, this is like 3 switch mode power supplies, and each one drives 1 colour LED. And we have that. Okay. This I'll probably just keep hold of as it is. They're all marked so we can see what they are. We can probably run this off low voltage with pulse width modulation. Maybe do something a bit useful with that. And the last one I have is this. So this is some power supply off an old TV. I've obviously taken the capacitor from there and used it for something or other. So yeah, fuse that solders into the board. I'm sure there's lots of nice power devices under here. There's a bridge rectifier. Looks like I have to unsolder this metal heatsink part first to get to them. Shouldn't be too much of a problem though. So from this one, I'm pretty sure I'll get the power devices off it. That's the most useful thing probably. Maybe a couple of the bigger capacitors. And there's a few more on the back as well. So that's what I have left. Not too much now to go at there. But I'll put it into the stash for the next time I do some salvage. Hope you enjoyed that, guys. I look forward to seeing you all again soon on Learning Electronics Repair. Ciao for now.